Hey guys, it's Sarah, and today I am going to be sharing with you the arcs that I read in the month of May. So all of these books came out in May. They were sent to me from the publishers in order to do a review for you guys, and I am going to show you which ones I'm going to be talking about today and tell you what my thoughts are on them. So May was interesting because I had some books that were sent to me physically, and then I had some books that were e-arcs, but I really had to put more of my focus on the physical books this time just because I ran out of time. I actually hit kind of a reading slump this month, so I didn't read as much as I wanted to, and because of that I kind of had to refocus my goals and be a little bit more picky about the books I was reviewing this month. So I decided to take all the ones that were physically sent to me, and those are the ones that I was going to review. So the first one that I have is A Good Marriage by Kimberly McCreight. This was sent to me by Harper, and this one came out on May 5th. This was also a book of the month pick, so a lot of people were picking this for their book of the month option, which I am really excited about because I absolutely loved this book. This is my first book by Kimberly McCreight, and she writes primarily, thriller books. And this was no exception here. So this one follows a woman who is a lawyer. She's a lawyer in a kind of high-powered or highly sought-after, prestigious law firm. It's not really where she wants to be, but certain circumstances in her life have forced her to work in this environment. And she is married. Her marriage is having some difficulty, so you see that going on along as well. Part of those reasons are why she's working at this law firm. She ends up getting a phone call from someone that she went to law school with and someone she hasn't had any contact with in years, and he has been arrested for the murder of his wife. His wife was found at the bottom of their stairs in their home, and she was killed, and he is the primary suspect. So he calls her to ask her to represent him, and she doesn't understand why he's asking her because they haven't had any contact. They weren't, they didn't necessarily leave college on good terms, so she's really confused about why he has asked her in particular to do this. But looking more into his case, she's believing that he did not do this, and so she decides to take him on, and it goes from there. So you start learning about his wife and the people that were in her life and maybe some of the situations that led up to her being killed. And oh my goodness. I will say the first half of this book was a little bit slow. It took a little bit to kind of really get into it and really to understand the characters and to, be introduced to them and get to know them a little bit. So the first half was a little bit slower, but the second half I could not read fast enough. I mean, once things really started getting revealed, and I think they got revealed at a good pace, it was like a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here. And I had all these theories in my head about, it could be this person and this could have happened and maybe it's because of this. And like every single one of them is wrong. And you start seeing things that get kind of hinted at that kind of disprove some of the theories that you're having. So I loved that. It kept me guessing until the end. And I love the way that it wrapped up. So this one is definitely also a little bit dark. There is some darker themes in here, definite trigger warnings for like child molestation and alcoholism definitely is in here as well. And then, there is a big party scene that happens in this book. That's kind of one of the centers of the story and of the case and everything. And it is a party where couples are invited to swap with each other in an upstairs bedroom, if you know what I mean. That's not like the central focus of it, but it's definitely part of it. So if that's something you're not comfortable with, that's definitely in here. But I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I gave it 4.5 stars, took off half a star just because it was a little bit slow in the beginning, but I loved it. And this will not be the last Kimberly McCreight book that I read. The next one that I read is Date Me Bryson Keller, and this was sent to me by Random House, and this one came out on May 19th. This one is a young adult book, and it is kind of I don't want to say it's a coming of age, but it's definitely a coming out story for our main character. So we follow our young character named Whye, and he is a closeted teen. They are living in California, I believe, and he goes to this, private like academy, high school type thing. And he is at a party one night with his friends, and they are kind of in a group talking to some of the more popular kids and stuff. And this conversation comes up about high school relationships and how one of them, Bryson Keller, is doesn't see the point in high school relationships. You know, they're not going to last, and it's kind of a waste of time and blah, blah, blah. And he's never had a girlfriend. And he gets teased about it all the time. And so they decide, something comes up and someone decides that we're going to make a dare where for the rest of the school year, every single week, you have to date somebody different. And, you know, there's rules and stuff like no physical things and all that stuff. So basically the bottom line is the first person that asks you out Monday morning, that's who you're going to date. No questions asked. And he agrees to do it. So, there happens to be one morning during this time period where Whye and Bryson are in a drama class or something, and Whye is kind of high strung at that point. He's really stressed out about something, and he's just kind of losing it. And he ends up asking Bryson to date him and not thinking Bryson would take it seriously, blah, blah, blah. It's a whole thing. But Bryson says yes. And because of that, Bryson treats Whye just like he would treat any of the girls that he's been dating. You know, he's like, I'm going to drive you to school every morning. You know, we'll walk to classes together and blah, blah, blah. So he basically does all the things that he would do with a girl with Whye. And from there, a relationship blossoms. Yeah. So, okay, my final thoughts on this one. I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I did like the storyline a lot. I like the idea of the dating thing and, you know, all that stuff. I didn't love the way that Whye asked him out. I think I wanted something a little bit more from that. I felt like it was just kind of weird and almost in a sense of anger. So I wish it was like a little bit more genuine than that, but the characters were really good. The storyline was really good. The thing that kind of bothered me about this book is that I really felt like I was being beat over the head with the message. And, you know, basically the message here is it's okay to be gay. And I know that already. So I didn't feel like, you know, I'm not a person that needs to be beat over the head with that. So that kind of bothered me a little bit. I was just kind of like, okay. But it was like, you know, really strong throughout here. And then, you know, as there is with a lot of cases in books like this, basically church was frowned upon and viewed as the enemy. And I didn't really like that either because I am a Christian. So it was kind of like, sometimes when I hit scenes like that or when I hit messages like that, I have to grit my teeth and get through it. So there were a couple of those in here. So that bothered me a little bit. Not enough to make me stop reading, but yeah, so it's interesting with this one. Like I did like the story. I like the characters. I'm glad I read it. But there were a couple things that just kind of bothered me a little bit about it. And there was also a lot of fighting scenes in here between people who don't agree with being gay. And like, you know, there's physical fighting. And I didn't like that. And that was never really like ever perceived as that's not okay. You know, it's not okay. Well, it was not okay to hit a gay person, but it also wasn't okay for the gay person to hit any other people as well. And that happened too. It wasn't just, you know, a straight person hitting a gay person. It was the opposite way as well. There was both of that and none of that was frowned upon. And so I wish that there was a message in here that that's not the way to go about things. And that wasn't there either. So a few things that kind of bothered me a little bit. Probably just personal preference for me, but the story's good. The characters are good. If you like kind of coming out or coming into your own, it could be a coming of age for Bryson, actually, even though he wasn't like the main character. Because, you know, he was discovering things about himself and questioning things about himself as well. And you saw him come into his own with that. So it could be that as well. But if you like those kind of stories, then you would probably really like this one. For me, I gave it 3 stars. And the last one that I read was Beach Read by Emily Henry. Now, this one I actually did read on my Kindle. It was sent to me through a NetGalley because we were not getting physical ARCs for a while. So this is not actually physical ARC. I pre-ordered a copy of this right after I finished it because I had to have it on my shelves because this is now my favorite book of the year. So this came out on May 19th as well. And this is published by Berkeley. So huge thanks to them for the e-ARC copy of it, but I just had to have my own. So I got this from Amazon as soon as I was done. But okay, this is an adult romance. And You've probably heard about it. A lot of people are talking about it. This was also a book of the month pick a couple months ago as well, so that was exciting. I think it was for April. And okay, this book follows two writers. They are both in kind of writing slumps. They're having trouble with meeting deadlines. They're not really feeling their creativity happen. They're having trouble, both of them, right? They both end up at next door neighbors at this lakefront house, and they're under different circumstances, but they both are there at the same time. They know each other because they were actually kind of rivals in college. They took a lot of classes together and just always were butting heads and stuff. So they know each other. They realize that they are next door neighbors, and they end up in a conversation one day where they're both realizing that they are having some trouble with their writing. Now, they write in different genres. So January, who is our female, she writes adult romance contemporaries with happy endings and all the good feelings. Our male author, Gus, he writes literary fiction, so dark, deeper meanings, super layered, all that stuff. Now, because of this, they both have preconceived notions of each other. So she feels that he always looks down his nose at her, doesn't take her seriously, that type of thing. He feels that she's unrealistic about the way that life really is, because all of her books end up happy, and that's not how things always end up. And so you see some of that contention there. So they decide that they are going to try an experiment, and they are going to write books from each other's genres. So he's going to write a nice, fluffy, happy ending romance. She's going to write a literary fiction that has deep, dark layers and goes deeper. And they decide to place a wager on it. So what ends up happening is, because they're both reaching out of their comfort zone here, they decide to help each other out. They're not just going to leave him in the dark. So she's going to take him on some little meet cute experiences and, romantic things, and, to give him inspiration for things that his characters could experience or go through. And then he is going to take her on some research adventures. And there's a certain thing that he's actually currently researching anyway. And so he's going to take her along for that. He's doing interviews, he's visiting sites, doing all this stuff. It revolves around cults. It's so good. And so they're getting that experience from each other and using that as inspiration. So they end up spending a lot of time together. Like I said, this is my favorite book of the year so far. It is fantastic. I was a little worried going into this one because I knew that I was probably going to enjoy it because the premise sounds amazing, and it was. But I was really surprised because I've read Emily Henry before, but I've read her young adult magical realism type stuff, and I didn't like it quite as much. But oh my gosh, she needs to write more like this because it was so great. The banter between these two was so on point. I could not get enough of it. I just wanted them to be back and forth the whole time, and they pretty much were. But the things that they were doing were so cute. They had this whole thing with the notebooks, and it was so great, and I loved it so much. And I could not get enough of them. I really, really couldn't. And then there's sexual tension in here that was so palpable. I could feel it. I could feel it around me. It was that bad. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how she got me to feel that way. But I felt frustrated. And I don't need to feel frustrated, but I felt frustrated, reading about the sexual tension between these characters. I was like, oh my gosh, can we just do this already? So it was so good, you guys. Like I said, the banter between these two. I also really liked that, these are adults and they would get into arguments. There were quite a few arguments in here, and they wouldn't let the other one walk away without finishing a conversation. So there wasn't any of that miscommunication trope or, anything like that. They both have things going on in their personal lives as well that they weren't sharing with each other, but it wasn't, intentionally left, whatever. So there is some of that, but there is if they were in an argument, he would not just let her walk away. No, explain your feelings to me. I don't want you to walk away And I'm sitting here like wondering what in the world you're thinking. Tell me what you're thinking. I want to know what's going on and how are you feeling and all this stuff. And they both did that. And I really appreciated that. So, they didn't leave an argument like with a million questions type thing. And that frustrates me when characters do that. So I appreciated that they actually talked out their feelings and they didn't intentionally leave anything, unsaid. So I really like that a lot. I could not get enough of them. And this is one of those books where I finished it and I just wanted to turn it over and start it over again. I wanted to reread it immediately. So that's why I bought a copy, because I know I will reread this at some point. And a very, very, very glowing 5 stars. Okay, guys, so those are the arcs that I read for the month of May. A little varied in my thoughts and opinions and definitely in the topics, so I thought that was great. And let me know down below if you guys have read any of these already. Let me know if you're planning to pick any of them up and what your thoughts were, and I will see you guys again soon. Hope you have a great day.